Lights, camera, action! Hello everyone. In this lecture, we're looking at the film industry. First, let's think about these questions. 1. What was the studio system? 2. How has the movie industry adapted to the changing times? Well, early newspapers were developed by business people for a small, politically involved elite group that could read. But the early film industry was built largely by entrepreneurs who wanted to make money and entertain everyone. Unlike television, whose birth and growth were predetermined and guided by the already well-established radio industry, there were no precedents, no rules, and no expectations for movies. Let's now go all the way back to its beginning. Film started out as a collection of still images viewed one after another in rapid succession, which creates the illusion of motion. And from that trick came an art form that blends literature, drama, photography, and music. So how does this illusion actually work? One of the most important tricks is called persistence of vision. Basically, this is the phenomenon that keeps you from seeing the black spaces between the frames of a projected film. When a film flashes 24 frames per second in front of your eyes, your brain doesn't interpret it as 24 images separated by flashes of black. Instead, it looks like a constant picture. This effect can be combined with another oddity of perception called the phi phenomenon. Which is an optical illusion that lets you see a series of images in rapid succession as a continuous motion. Think of those flip books you played with as a kid. Take a series of still pictures, shot or drawn in sequence, flip them quickly before your eyes, and you will get the illusion of motion. Well, that's why we have the names motion picture, moving picture, or movie. The concept of the motion picture was first introduced to a mass audience through Thomas Edison's kinetoscope in 1891. This device would become the predecessor to the motion picture projector. The kinetoscope was a cabinet with a window through which individual viewers could experience the illusion of a moving image. However, it wasn't until the Lumiere brothers released the cinematography in 1895 that motion pictures were projected for audience viewing. Incidentally, we get the term cinema from it. Unlike the Edison kinetograph, the cinematography was a lightweight film projector that also functioned as a camera and printer. In December 1895, the Lumieres held the world's first ever commercial film screening, a sequence of about 10 short scenes, including the brothers' first film, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, a segment lasting less than a minute and depicting workers leaving the family's photographic instrument factory at the end of the day. Early movies were shot in a fixed frame, that is, the camera did not move, and there was no editing. It was enough to satisfy the earliest audiences. But soon, filmmakers wanted to make more money. French filmmaker Georges Méliès began making narrative motion pictures, that is, movies that can tell a story. At the end of the 1890s, he began making stories based on sequential shots in different places. He simply took one shot, stopped the camera, moved it, took another shot, and so on. Méliès is often called the first artist of the cinema because he brought narrative into the medium in the form of imaginative tales such as A Trip to the Moon, 1902. Edwin S. Porter, an Edison Company camera operator, saw that films could be an even better storyteller with some artistic use of camera placement and editing. His 12-minute The Great Train Robbery, 1903, was the first movie to use editing, intercutting of scenes, and a mobile camera to tell a relatively sophisticated story. Not only did The Great Train Robbery establish the realistic narrative as a standard in films, it was also the first major box office hit. Its success paved the way for the growth of the film industry as investors began opening the first permanent film theaters. The motion picture of the silent era was generally simplistic in nature, acted in overly animated movements to catch people's eye, accompanied by live music played by musicians in the theater, and with written subtitles to create a mood and to narrate a story. Within the confines of this medium, one filmmaker in particular emerged to transform the silent film into an art and to unlock its potential as a medium of serious expression and persuasion. That filmmaker was D.W. Griffith. He worked closely with his camera crew to experiment with shots, angles, and editing techniques that could heighten the emotional intensity of his scenes. He found that by practicing parallel editing, in which a film alternates between two or more scenes of action, he could create an illusion of simultaneity. He could then heighten the tension of the film's drama by alternating between cuts more and more rapidly until the scenes of action converged. Griffith used this technique to great effect in his controversial film The Birth of a Nation in 1915. Other techniques that Griffith employed included panning shots, through which he was able to establish a sense of scene and to engage his audience more fully in the experience of the film, and tracking shots, or shots that traveled with the movement of a scene, which allow the audience, through the eye of the camera, to participate in the film's action. The Birth of a Nation was the first full-length, over 90 minutes feature film. It was America's most popular and profitable movie made and remained so until 1939, when it was surpassed by Gone with the Wind. However, The Birth of a Nation featured anti-black Ku Klux Klan members as its heroes. Although the film was revolutionary in form, it was racist in content. By 1915, most of the major film studios had moved to Hollywood. Studios developed their own complete teams of actors and actresses, writers, directors, technicians, and equipment that enabled them to produce large numbers of successful feature films. They discovered that certain actors and actresses could attract viewers no matter what the movie was about. So the star system was born. People started going to movies just because a certain actor or actress would appear in the movie. This allowed the film studios to make contracts with the actors or actresses for more than just a movie or two, but for years. As was the case with newspapers and magazines, the advent of television significantly altered the movie-audience relationship. But the nature of that relationship had been shaped and reshaped in the 3 decades between the coming of sound and the coming of television. According to some historians, the release of The Jazz Singer in 1927 marked the birth of the talking film, in which the actor Al Jolson improvised a few lines of a synchronized dialogue and sang 6 songs. Audiences, hearing an actor speak on screen for the first time, were enchanted. The impact of sound on movies and their audiences were huge. First, sound made possible new genres, musicals and verbal comedies, for example. Second, as actors and actresses now had to really act, performing aesthetics improved. Third, sound made film production a much more complicated and expensive proposition. As a result, many smaller filmmakers closed shop, solidifying the hold of the big studios over the industry. By 1930, 8 studios produced 95% of all American films, and they continued to experience growth even during the Great Depression. The 5 most influential of these studios, Warner Brothers, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, RKO, 20th Century Fox, and Paramount, were vertically integrated. That is, they controlled every part of the system as it related to their films, from the production to release, distribution, and even viewing. Well, there are 3 component systems in the movie industry: production, distribution, and exhibition. Production is the making of movies. In the past, distribution was about making prints of films and shipping them to theaters. Now it also means supplying movies to television networks, cable and satellite networks, makers of video discs, and internet streaming companies. Besides, distributors now finance production and take responsibility for advertising and promotion, and for setting and adjusting release dates. Exhibition is the retail branch of the film industry. It involves the public screening of motion pictures, usually for paying customers in a site that is devoted to such screenings, the movie theater. What the exhibitor sells is the experience of film, and frequently concessions like soft drinks and popcorn. Now, back to the history part. The late 1930s and early 1940s are sometimes known as the golden age of Hollywood, a time of unparalleled success for the movie industry. During the golden age, these major studios controlled every aspect of the movie industry. However, they declined after World War II for a number of reasons. For one thing, the US government forced the studios to give up their control over theater chains. This dealt a devastating blow from which the studio system would never recover. While economic factors and antitrust legislation played key roles in the decline of the studio system, perhaps the most important factor was the advent of the television. Given the opportunity to watch movies comfortably in their own homes by the early 1950s, millions of Americans went to the cinema far less regularly than they had only several years earlier. The film industry struggled to recapture audiences from television by using both technical and content innovations. Some of these innovations remain today and serve the medium and its audiences well. These include more attention to special effects, greater dependence on and improvements in color, and widescreen films that increase the immersive quality of the theater. In the 1970s, with the rise of the works by Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and others, a new breed of directors emerged. These directors were young and film school educated, and they contributed a sense of professionalism, sophistication, and technical mastery to their work, leading to a wave of blockbuster productions, including Star Wars, 1977, and E.T., the Extraterrestrial, 1982. Movie production and marketing techniques also began to shift. Instead of putting money in every film, studios began to invest in fewer films in the hope of getting some bigger successes. Distributors spend more on TV and radio advertising to reap more profits. At the same time, the wide release method of movie distribution, in which a film is released on a large number of screens in several territories all at one time, is adopted more often. Surely enough, in the past 4 decades, HBO, DVD, Netflix, and the like have changed the movie business drastically. not only by affecting how movies are made, but also by changing how they are marketed and watched. As with anything else, the film industry is still adapting, and forward-thinking individuals are sure to come up with more innovative ways in the future.